Hi everyone, this is Ant Wilson Prangley. I imagine that you've watched the Introduction to Batch 2 video that gives you an overview of what you can expect. I had an additional request from one of the students in our interactions on email. And the student said, it's hard when everything is online and they're so busy to understand where everything fits. So I thought I would record this video to help you understand where everything fitted in sessions 1 to 6. So this will give you a platform for those of you who are a little bit disoriented to undertake the activities and the lessons of sessions 7 to 11. If you've got a good grasp of sessions 1 to 6, then you don't necessarily need to watch this now, although I think at some point in the next week or so, it might be useful. If you would like to kind of spend a bit of time going back over sessions 1 to 6, then this video is just for you. Okay, you're listening on. Well, that means maybe you want a little bit of extra material to help you understand sessions 1 to 6. So here goes. Firstly, I want you to just have a look at this conceptual diagram, which suggests that all businesses are part of an operating context, and they need to find their place in that operating context. That is the work of strategy formulation. Where to play, how to be positioned, what is the winning strategy and the winning approach. And businesses can do that in very many ways. But let's say, for example, that this particular business has positioned itself there in the bottom left-hand corner, and that's its strategic positioning, its strategic orientation, and where it thinks it can be most successful. So this business positions itself to compete in a particular way, and in my mind, that is the work of strategy formulation. It's the work of decision making, of analysis. It's the material you covered in the environment of business. But in the context of this course, it was what was done in decision making. Now, this course deals with how to achieve that position, how to organize the business, and how to actually make what was a noble intention into a reality. Now, it might be easy, and the norm in our minds, I think, is to potentially see strategy formulation and strategy implementation, or decision making and strategic implementation, as the work of an architect and the work of a builder. The architect envisions, the architect designs, the architect thinks, the builders do, the builders make things happen. But if you revisit Morris's first lecture, you will see that he critiques this approach. He says, perhaps this is, in his language, not the optimal way to see the process. And there is a much tighter relationship, at least we like to think, and in our experience, a much tighter relationship between strategic implementation and strategy formulation or decision making. So Morris used the example of a potter, somebody making pottery from clay, and proposed that the process of strategy formulation, the process of strategy implementation could be much more accurately seen as the artist working with clay. The artist embodies the practice. The relationship between thinking and doing is brought together. There is both thinking, there is feeling, there is doing. The hands become important. And so it suggests that actually we need to see these two processes, formulation and implementation, as one. They're bound together. In fact, perhaps sometimes implementation comes before formulation, because most people, when formulating a strategy, are formulating it after a period of business implementation of a different strategy. This is crucial. So I want to take you back to the slides I used in the orientation to this course, where I said decision making is about the map, and now strategy implementation is about the road and the journey, and that the journey is different to how it was envisaged on the map. No plan survives intact when it lands with the rubber on the road. But I want to suggest that this was only partly correct. In fact, it was also partly incorrect. Because, actually, as we have tried to show you in batch 1, in sessions 1 especially, the strategy implementation and the strategy formulation processes are very tightly related. How can you develop strategy if you're not in touch with the middle management of your business, with the factory floor, with the front sales office? Strategy formulation without deep knowledge and deep insight into what is actually happening is pie in the sky. I like to say that if a strategy doesn't have an 80% chance of success, it's a bad strategy, because good strategy really understands what the organization is capable of, what its secret sauce is, what its strengths are, what its weaknesses are. And so when we think about the failure of strategy implementation, we should really go back to strategy formulation and say, in lieu of who this organization really is, was that a feasible approach? And what else could have been done to enable the execution of that strategy? And so strategy formulation and strategy implementation are better seen as part of one process. There is an interrelationship, a back and forth between what the session 1 reading suggested were seizing, or sensing rather, and seizing. So my analogy of the bus and the directions that the bus could take is really not completely true, because you cannot decide to go somewhere without knowing where you are. You cannot decide to drive somewhere without knowing what the bus is that you're on, who the people are. Some buses are built for some journeys and other buses are built for others. And learning about the organization is crucial to better strategy development. This for me is one of the key takeaways of session 1. And it's why so much time is spent on trying to think about not just static linear models of strategy, but issues of dynamic capabilities, issues of changing the organization, issues of innovating and shifting what's possible. And the relationship between action and thought is more tightly brought together. That was session 1. There were, of course, many different dimensions and issues explored there, particularly a whole set of readings around why it is hard to achieve strategy execution, and some suggestions. Go back to the business that we started with in my conceptual diagram. I want to move this business, just for simplicity's sake, into the middle of the screen so that we can talk and analyze it. We start in session 2 outside the organization. This might seem contradictory, because surely strategy implementation is about your business. But as Karen indicated, that is not the case. Strategy implementation is about the ecosystem around your business. It is about the different players in the field. It is about the industry that you're part of, thinking about that industry. It is about the life cycle of a company. It is about pulling together the supply chains. It's about the international operating environment and the choices around internationalization. So strategy should not be seen as something that is done by your organization, but actually done by the system that you're part of. Because that system can be brought together in very particular ways to enable you to be successful. This is why session 2 focused on the context. We start outward before we go inward. It also focused on this question that Karen raised called fit. How does your organization fit into the environment? And what is the configuration of elements in that environment that you need to organize to be successful? In fact, it might be more accurate to see your organization as much wider than simply the organogram and the people who are on your direct payroll. Think about companies like Uber. And that's why we focused on Uber in this context, because it is a business that is very uniquely organized with many other participants in its environment. Think about a business like Google. For Google, advertisers are a key component of its environment, as well as content producers and web developers. That was the focus of session 2, putting the organization in context and thinking about fit. In session 3, we come back to the business and look inside the organization. We ask the question, what is this thing called an organization actually? What is in our mind when we think about an organization? Is it a machine? Is it an organism? The result of those assumptive mindsets substantively shapes how we strategize about the organization in the implementation context. How would you design an organization to achieve your strategy? In session 3, we introduced the idea that an organization can be seen as involving or a mix of different components. There are different models for this, and Dr. Skeepers introduced a few. But this is the crucial idea, that you begin to see the organization as involving different parts. Then the question becomes, for strategy implementation, how do you align the components of the organization? First, what are they? And secondly, how do you align them? Now, it might be okay, just as a little detour, if the components are not aligned. For example, maybe in a very entrepreneurial early phase organization, they might be exploring multiple opportunities. Or a business might be hedging its bets for a particular period of time. So that's okay. I'm not saying that organizations must be one thing, that businesses must have only one goal. Perhaps there are a few. And that's fine. But what we are saying is that if you do have a particular objective, then it is important that the organization align around that objective. That was really the summary of session 3. Of course, you can go back to that material and you can dig more deeply into what are the components? How does alignment happen? What is this thing called organizational development? Okay, so we're done with sessions 1 to 3. Then we started to get into different components of the organization, specifically 2. We do a deep dive into structure and culture. And we do this because we believe that these are 2 crucial elements to get right in the strategy implementation process. It's not because they're the only ones, as you will see with all the models, especially the models I illustrated at the beginning of the culture session in the introduction to culture. There are many frameworks for thinking about organizational components, but these 2 are certainly crucial. Some of those other models include technology, HR systems, management processes, leadership, operational processes, etc. Those are certainly crucial. We focus on structure and culture because you have focused a lot in the PG DIP on HR. You have focused a lot on technology and innovation in the innovation course. There is a course itself called leadership, and you have covered many operational issues. But these 2 elements we really want to add to your toolkit. We explore culture well, firstly, let's start with structure. We explore structure and show how different structures can enable certain outcomes. And we hopefully give you a much wider choice of thinking about how you structure work, relationships, and reporting lines and divisional lines in a business. We then dive deep into culture, and we look at what culture really is and why it is such a challenging phenomenon for leaders to work with, but also how important it is for strategy. These two focus areas were the focus areas for session 4 and session 5. So that's the first 5 sessions. Then we step back a bit from the organization and we ask the question, well, if we want alignment, how do we actually get it? Now, we could wish it to happen, and that's what many leaders do. Or we could undertake a particular process, a change leadership process. We could start to think not just about wishing something to happen, but actually making it happen in a complex, resistant social system. And this is the work of leading and managing change, which is the work that you have completed in session 6, and which we hope has illustrated some of the opportunities and challenges and actions that need to be taken to enable an organization to shift, to be able to achieve strategic results. That was the heart of session 6. That summarizes my thinking around sessions 1 to 6 and how they fit together. I hope that orients you to what you've gone through and sets you up for success with sessions 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Good luck.